rarely a government has such a focus, and clear ideas as the Singapore government has. You might not agree with some of their ideas. For example, you might not agree in just having a smaller number of high quality licensees, but that was their
Yeah,
idea
like
and they implemented it well.
it seems to me that rather than selecting by a certain number of licensees, it should be like anybody who qualifies should be able to get the license, right? It's like it should be either you qualify or you don't, right?
Yeah.
Why are they grading on a curve for licenses?
Well, this is your US roots coming out, right? So the US is a great land of opportunity.
Hi, my name is Lawrence Linker. I'm an executive, entrepreneur, and investor in crypto. When I first joined the industry a little over 4 years ago, I had a lot to learn. And I found that I learned best by just talking to people active in the industry with specific areas of expertise. The Coinversations podcast is my invitation to you to join me in these conversations so that we can both continue learning. Of course, nothing said by me or any of my guests is financial advice, and you must do your own research before making any investment decisions. Today, I'm speaking to my friend and my lawyer, Giacomo Morello. When I first started a blockchain project myself, XD Academy, I needed to set up an entity, a structure for the new company. And having done this before in Singapore, especially, it's very easy. And I quickly came to understand that setting up an entity for a crypto project is not easy. I spoke to a lot of different lawyers looking for the right person to help me with this. And ultimately, I was just so impressed by how smart Giacomo was, how knowledgeable he was about many different subjects, and went with him as our lawyer for XD Academy. And I wanted to get his perspective on where we're at in terms of regulatory considerations for crypto companies today. I hope that you enjoy this conversation as much as I enjoyed having it. Giacomo, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Lawrence.
So I've already given my little introduction to you, but maybe Giacomo, a quick intro to you in your own words.
Okay, so yes, my name is Giacomo Merello, although most of my clients know me as Jack, right? I am currently special economic envoy of the Commonwealth realm of Antigua and Barbuda to Singapore, and I am a long-term international lawyer and regulatory consultant and offshore consultant since almost 20 years by now. Since 2017, 16, 17, I also started more and more to work with crypto and fintech projects and clients. And by today, 2024, it is pretty much, the most solid percentage of my activity and work on a day-to-day basis.
Okay. Well, before we go into that, just out of curiosity, Giacomo, I'm going to go ahead and take a wild guess that you're not native Antiguan. What is the interest in having a diplomatic position?
Okay, so I started to work, as I mentioned, I worked a lot in my life with, in general, offshore jurisdictions, including a lot of Caribbean. And one of the ones I worked the most in the past was exactly Antigua. So at a certain point, it made sense for me to basically take the citizenship there. At the time, there was a very convenient citizenship by investment program, which is still there today in a slightly reformed way, and we can enter more into that later on. And after working some more, basically with the local government and other diplomats, basically I was offered this position, and I took it because first of all, I genuinely think that some of these Antiguan opportunities are useful and interesting, and then there were a lot of things in common, funnily, between Antigua and Singapore in a way, So there is the British origin in a way, common. Both of them island nations, both of them, in the middle of the sea, both of them with focus on financial and economic growth. And of course, Singapore had much more luck and much more fortune, right, than Antigua and most of the Caribbeans had, but still the same thematics are there, including thematics now maybe less interesting for your general audience, but there are like a lot of thematics in relation to pollution of the seas, to the sea level increase. There are all of these themes which are in common. And there is also the crypto element in common in the sense that Singapore, still today, one of the foremost, financial basis for crypto projects. Sometimes we know in a misguided way, and sometimes in an appropriate way, but still one of the first to have a comprehensive, let's say, regulatory framework as well, and a certain certainty. And in Antigua as well, we were, in fact, the very first ones to issue in all of the Caribbean area regulation for VASPs.
Mhm.
And this also contributed, in me working with them also as a special economic envoy, because of my experience in the field that the most of the local, let's say, political class did not necessarily have, or even at the level of legal professionals. We are in general few, as you know, yeah, in the world that really work with crypto on a daily basis since this number of years. So for that reason, I was approached in the years by several governments actually to help, even planning which frameworks to do. Sometimes helping with some of the drafting of the regulations and so on. So this basically is the reason. Yeah, I am not originally Antiguan, but I feel Antiguan at heart. I go to Antigua every time I can. The beaches are absolutely beautiful.
Mm.
And, it's still partly, especially Barbuda, because it's Antigua and Barbuda. They're two islands together. Barbuda is especially pretty unspoiled, and you have like 20 or 30 kilometers of beaches with the
Mm.
water and sand like at least as beautiful as the Maldives, if not maybe better in some
Wow.
parts. And nobody, there is nobody. So in recent years, even from tourism, it became kind of attractive for actually a lot of US, in particular US billionaires, which seek, the beauty, but without the paparazzi, without the
Sure.
stuff. So we have there often Bezos coming with the
You're
yacht.
you're earning you're earning you're living up to your title, man. You're doing good diplomacy
Well, what
right
to do?
now.
What to do? Yeah, man, it's actually it just because it's stuff I saw, and I believe in.
So are you
So
in are you Antiguan? You have
I am
Antiguan
Antiguan. Yeah,
citizenship
yeah.
now? Yeah. Okay. Very
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. Actually, Antigua is one of the few that does not give at all diplomatic posts of any kind, junior or male,
Without citizenship.
without being
Got it.
citizens. Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because a
We,
lot do. Yeah. You can
yeah,
definitely.
we know that certain founders of blockchain networks, right?
Yeah.
Without making which one,
Yeah,
tron.
sure. Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, yeah.
Yeah.
Let's not enter into that. Yeah.
Sure. But look, Giacomo, I'm super interested to have this conversation with you because I really think a lot of people, unless you have personally tried to set up a company in the space, most people probably have no idea the legal game of Twister that we have to play to set up structures that are behind all of the crypto companies that we hear about and the dApps that we use. And you're someone who's really an expert in this. So maybe in a way that is speaking to sort of a general audience, people that are interested in crypto, but maybe haven't set up their own firm before. Can you give sort of a general overview of what are the concerns that somebody might have setting up a new crypto firm today?
Okay. Um, so you are quite right in saying that most of the founders they are well intentioned. They often have even great ideas, sometimes great and new, sometimes great and not so new. But they often don't really have an idea on how to structure it and how to navigate, along the seas of crypto regulation today. And yeah, it's not easy. What I can tell you is that overall the crypto space did give, because of this, a renewed lease on life to a lot of offshore jurisdictions that before were starting to be progressively abandoned in favoring of a worldwide phenomenon of
Mm.
reshoring or onshoring, right? And why was that? Well, there was a lot of regulatory, insecurity on, if I do this and that project with this and that crypto, can I do it in where I live? Can I offer it validly? It's not even about taxation, although taxation is a topic, not as much as because people want to avoid it. In fact, I rarely, if ever, have crypto founders who have a concern of, I don't want to pay taxes. It's not this. It's just that sometimes, depending how things are done, the fear is to have sudden and unpredictable tax liabilities, and that's
Mm.
not good, right? So okay, so the first general, let's say, advice that I can give is, first of all, you have to start from, it seems easy, but from who you are, okay, where you're from, and where you live. Okay, so these are very, very important topics. Okay, so for example, if you are a US person or a UK citizen or a Singapore resident or a mix of all of these things, it actually makes a huge difference on what you can and you cannot do, what you need the licensing for, what you need to do in the future, and so this is always a great idea to start with this. And the other concern that I see that is often misguided, it's wanting to, how you say in English, how we say in English, right? Wanting to have the cake and eat it as well, right?
Mm.
In which sense? So a lot of people want to have the flexibility of the structure being lean and less regulated, but then they are not okay at being most likely unbanked or with big difficulties working with fiat, for
Hmm.
example, or even be able to have things which are normal in the onshore world, like, I don't know, corporate credit cards or corporate debit cards, the management of expenses, or how to do with employees and so on. But let's say the first general advice is, yeah, it's you gotta start from your context initially. Okay.
Hmm.
Of course, this becomes more complex when the founders, which is often the case, they are from mixed nationalities in mixed countries. It's not unusual to have founder of a crypto project that maybe never even met, okay,
Yeah.
in person, but they live, one in Hong Kong, one in Mumbai, and so on.
Yeah. So let's look at that for a second. So some of the factors that might go into consideration, right, is where somebody lives. And I mean, Giacomo, as you know, we've been through this together, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yes.
But these are things that people need to consider, right? Like so let's say you have which is maybe a typical early stage crypto project. You might have three founders from three different nationalities living in three different countries from even what their nationalities might be, right? And then there's the additional factor of like who do they want to be able to serve? Ideally, they want to serve anybody that they can, but even that is also restricted, isn't it?
Yeah, depending on the product, right? Which also is one of the important factors.
Mm-hmm.
You probably have to restrict certain nationalities. Some things are quite straightforward to understand. So obviously, most projects in general shouldn't serve, nationals or residents of countries which are either subject of, United Nation-wide sanctions. I mean, for example, the Republic of North Korea, or I don't know, Libya during the war, or similar jurisdictions. And that's one element. And then there might be also element of this kind depending on where you live. So for example, if you live in the European Union, and your project is based there, even Russians then, or people from Belarus are as well considered, clients that you cannot really onboard or offer the products to. But for example, you live in another jurisdiction, maybe those are okay and others will not be okay. So definitely, also the offerees of the product, and even more if they are offerees of some form of investment, or
Mm-hmm.
some form of raise, right? Then this would have to be taken in consideration. With the most problematic one so far, and this is not news from you, for you, or for any of was of in general, it's US persons, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this just because in the US, certain concepts of what is considered regulated and not are different in principle as in most other countries. So yeah, so basically nationality and residency of the founders is one element. Then we have nationality and residency of both the final product, target audience, and also the in potential investors or
Mm-hmm.
pre-purchasers of some, token raise, or something like that is a factor. And then there is also a factor of where you are actually physically operating, right, the
Mm-hmm.
business from. Because at the end of the day, right, there is also an element in which you might be structured in any exotic country in the world, but you are all based in the US and you are operating this entity from the US, then how we say your nexus, is a US nexus, then you are still considered as being in the US no matter the jurisdiction. This is something that is also often misunderstood by potential clients, people that contact me. They feel that, okay, I opened I don't know, a company in Seychelles or in Marshall Islands, so I'm fine, right? No,
Mm-hmm.
that's often not the case. Just because you have an offshore company, if you actually run it physically entirely from another country, chances are that actually you are regulated as well
Mm-hmm.
by that another country where you live in.
Yeah. I mean, we've certainly seen a lot of examples of that, right? Where regulatory action is taken by one country against a company where, there on the surface seems like there's no business at all happening with that country, but if they are motivated, they find a way.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I guess maybe I realize it's such a case by case basis. It's kind of hard to speak about this in very broad terms, but is it possible that you could talk about some of the structures that you recommend for clients, or are there any particular like common structures that you'll use for, let's say, typical like DeFi crypto project? They do plan to have a token. they are raising through either a SAFT or safe plus token warrant kind of structure. Is there like a least common denominator structure for this type of
Yeah,
business?
of course there is. Um, of course there is also an element of um, how much resources the project has from the start, right? So one thing is the ideal structure, and another thing is what you can do at a
Sure.
certain at any specific moment. So it's something very practical, right? But yes, there are some broad but still more specific guidelines I can extend. So from my point of view, generally speaking, when the project is simpler and not really subject to specific regulation project, then there is a there are broader options in terms of what can be set up.
Hmm.
There are many, Caribbean jurisdictions which are suitable. The one I'm working the most with at the moment for simpler projects would be St. Vincent and the
Hmm.
Grenadines. But a lot of people used in the past BVI, a lot of people used Caymans. Those maybe now they are less useful or more problematic for other regulatory reasons, but there
What
are.
changed? Because I remember there was a time when it feels like it was all BVI, right? There was like a period where
Yeah, BVI is not really recommendable anymore in the sense that it does have now a regulatory framework for crypto, which in some cases is quite stringent. You might have read about a couple of weeks ago, the US went after certain market makers, crypto
hmm
market makers. This is actually something that in the BVI they are already doing in the sense that apparently market making is subject to regulation, and even projects that issue their own token and then engage a market making provider to give broader and more deep liquidity to their token trading. They actually might be liable for regulation now for licensing in BVI, even the project itself, if it does, if directly or indirectly market making on its own token. And then there are other elements which they were inevitable for the BVI themselves, like now the most of the elements that were private before, like for example the who are the directors, who are the beneficial owners, they are now either publicly available, publicly published, or they are establishing a system through which they will be, shortly so. So, when you start to consider, well, what are my advantages at opening in BVI, for example, right? So, okay, I have regulation, then regulation probably I had even in my own country by now. And then, I have publicity, then I have publicity. So what are the advantages of going offshore in that sense? Offshores, they
hmm.
make sense if they have certain characteristics, right? When those characteristics, they start to fall short, and there are still other options which are best, that's that.
What are
Uh,
those? Actually, Jack, before we go on, let's take a moment to hear from our sponsor. Ready for a real bank alternative using crypto rails? Meet Cast, the ultimate card to spend stablecoins and soon crypto at over 150 million merchants. Available to over 100 countries, it takes just 3 minutes to set up. Top up using USDT, USDC, or USDE from supported networks like Solana, Tron, Ethereum, Polygon, and more. Start spending instantly using Apple or Google Pay. Splitting a bill? Send money through WhatsApp or Telegram. Need to get paid? Get a virtual USD account and receive funds in your Cast account as USD stablecoins. Cast is the first true bank alternative for the globally mobile crypto economy and remote workers. Premium metal cards or Solana cards earn up to 12% in points, and Coinversations listeners get $10 in USDT for your next coffee on Cast. Just download the app using the link in the show notes. Okay, so Jack, we're talking about the characteristics that make a jurisdiction a good place to sort of set up the entity in. Why don't we talk that a little bit about that a little bit? What makes something a very advantageous jurisdiction to incorporate your crypto company in, and what makes um, a jurisdiction a bad place to incorporate?
Oh, well, it always depends on the point of view, yeah, what is bad and what is good. But
Sure.
for sure, right, in an offshore jurisdiction at least, what you're looking for is privacy. So in general, this is not necessarily to hide from, governments or something. It's also about protecting yourself from scams, from hackers, from ransoms, you know that, for example, you're American, right? You might recall that some of the bigger players in the crypto field there, which were originally based in downtown San Francisco, they had to actually close their headquarters and relocate elsewhere in the States because at a certain point, burglars started to follow, Binance or
Mm.
Coinbase employees on the street and after threaten them to obtain crypto from the exchange, right? So privacy, taken into account for a crypto founder, it's important, right? Also, your project might simply tank for reasons which are not really your fault. And there might be token holders of any kind that are angry at you. So privacy is a consideration. Yeah. So
Mm.
the lack of privacy is always a red flag. Yeah, for an offshore jurisdiction. For an onshore, which is what you might use to, for example, do capital raises, using safes, then it's different because you need for an equity raise and a safe, a Series A, you need to have a jurisdiction which is presentable, reputable, everything is transparent, everything is public, So there are these elements. The other element, especially for projects that are starting, is how does the regulation look there? Is there one? Or is there not, or if it's there, it's easy to obtain or it's not easy to obtain. We know, for example, that by now that the Singapore crypto related, regulation is quite hard and the licensing is quite hard to achieve and quite long to achieve. And it's not a secret that the Singaporean authorities, they tend to want and prefer projects that are applying for a license here and that already come with from other licensing in other
Mm.
jurisdiction, maybe junior. So a lot of projects do that, depending also on money. For example, let's say that you are a new form of launchpad or a new form of centralized exchange or decentralized exchange, DeFi, and you want to be, as regulated as you can. Typically, what we do, we go in steps,
Mm-hmm.
So it might be that we set up in a private and less regulated jurisdiction initially, and then we take it from there. We see the project gains
And
traction, then we
and
go for a
it's
junior regulation, then, and so on.
Yeah, and a jurisdiction where it's less challenging to get a license.
A jurisdiction where it's less challenged to get the license. So right now, other than my Antigua, but I don't want to, talk too
Sure.
much
No, no, no.
about
I'm
that,
just
but there
saying.
is Delta.
I'm just saying, like, in terms of like taking it in steps, a strategy, the strategy that you're describing
Yes,
to just to make it more clear for people is that you might apply for a license in a jurisdiction that is not as challenging to get a license,
correct.
right?
Yeah.
And
It,
then
it,
slowly apply to like more and more challenging jurisdictions.
there
And
is,
then at some point, would you say that Singapore, I mean, what is the like crown jewel of the license that a crypto firm could have?
I would say that the Singapore one is up there.
Yeah.
Yes. Together with the FCA one in the UK, also up there. The European Union, MiCA, MiCAR, Somewhat, but the problem is that because it's very tight and it excludes major tokens like, I don't know, USDT, it's not really having that much traction. Uh,
Mm,
of course, the bit license of, of New York as well, it can be considered, a very high level achievement in that. So, but it's unlikely for most projects that are not already successful, not being already working before with
yeah.
smaller licenses to arrive there,
No one
right?
starts. No one starts there.
No one, I wouldn't say no one, but there are very few cases because, I mean, it's a significant economic effort,
Yeah.
as well.
And
So
I think that's something that a lot of founders don't realize as well, right? So like even setting up like yeah, this whole thing, I don't know if people understand fully how frustrating this process really is. And I'll give an example like you know, all of this structuring, for example, is expensive, right? Of course, you have to pay lawyers, you know. Giacomo, you look very nice in this three-piece suit, you know.
thank you.
These guys, guys like Jack are not cheap, okay? So you got to pay him, but you also have to pay the licensing body or the rather the Jack, what's the word I'm looking
The
for? Like
regulator, the
the regular,
regulator.
yeah, the like you have fees, you know, for creating a corporate entity. And if you like most companies in the space, you're probably going to have multiple entities for different purposes. You might have a token issuer, you might have an operating company, et cetera. And then each of these companies, you know, you're probably looking at like maybe up to $5,000 a year of fees that you need to cover. And if you're a very
Sometimes
early
more, yeah,
stage,
sometimes
yeah,
more.
yeah, I'm sure. And again, depends on the jurisdiction, right? The jurisdiction that you go
Mhm.
for. And so if you're a very early stage startup, maybe, you know, you have cobbled together a couple bucks from friends and family, you know, you have like some kind of pre-seed round you've done for like 100,000 or $250,000, let's say. Um, you know, these fees eat into your capital quite quickly. So there's a big temptation to just say, you know what, let's just do it without this. But then, you know, on the other side of it, you don't want to run the risk that you actually do become successful. And then at some point, you know, the agency looks back and says, hey, but you were, you know, doing this illegally for this period of time,
Yes, that is
right?
correct. I mean, it's a game over. So the thing is, legal and regulatory aspects, incredibly. Of course, I'm a lawyer, so for me, it's my deformation as well. But incredibly, they often get overlooked. But the real issue is that they are game overs. So if that part was not well taken care of, they have the potentiality to actually totally destroy the project, like from 100 to zero.
Mm-hmm.
So it's of fundamental importance to give the right approach. Unfortunately, though, there are a lot of providers in the industry that, for a variety of reasons, generally because they just don't do many of these cases, and so they kind of let pay. They make you pay for their experience, right? They really tend to overcharge or overstructure from day one, and
Yeah.
this can be off-putting. Yeah, this is true in here. It's true even in the Caribbean. I had clients which, in reality, at their level, where they were that stage, where they were in that moment, they only needed maybe one, well thought entity. And they came to me, doubtful, oh, we went to this and this, big name law firm, and there is a $100,000 bill for these,
Mm-hmm.
six different entities that they want to make me set up. I don't understand. And most of us is like with medical things, right? You go to the doctor, you cannot trust what the doctor tells you because it's not your field. You don't understand anything mostly
Yeah.
what the doctor
Or
says.
like
So,
it's more like I think maybe more like going to the mechanic, right?
or the mechanic, yeah. I mean,
Yeah. The car, yeah.
You trust him, yeah, the conditioner compressor is weak,
Yeah, exactly.
and
Yeah.
okay, so what do I do? Yeah, yeah, I gotta change it for K. It's something like that. So my approach, which I have to say so far was successful with clients and appreciated, is always scalable. So I always
Mm,
try. I also tend to work with smaller startups. I did and I do have in my portfolio even huge exchanges and huge known, hugely known projects. But most of the time I work with smaller startups. So, it's appreciated that we start in steps. We start with the minimum that we need at that moment. Then, we step it
yeah.
up, a bit bigger. Then we see what happens. It's also smarter in a way because our industry is very fluid. Things happen constantly. Laws get, and regulation change continuously. Sensitivity of the people, sensitivity of the governments, it changes constantly, right? So if you start small and you increase as you go, you also have opportunities, different windows of opportunities to adapt. And maybe what we would have done spending a lot of money 1 year ago, oh, maybe good that we didn't do it at the time. Now we can do this something else that,
Mm,
it's
yeah.
suitable for now because everything is changing.
Yeah,
Um,
I want to talk more about that in a minute. But first I've been like burning to ask you if you have any personal experiences, obviously not naming names or anything, too specific that would give it away. But have you personally dealt with clients that came to see you either after things were too late or like imagining a situation where someone asks for you for their help, or rather ask you for your help, and then you kind of look at what they're doing and you go, "Oh my God, like this person is really in trouble."
Yeah, well, yes, yes, it happens. I can't say that it happens all the time, but I would say that it happens, a good 25% of the time, actually.
Okay.
When
Yeah.
and maybe in 10% of the time, it's, a total disaster. Yeah. So
Yeah.
in which they either did things totally without any, legal or regulatory consulting at all. They just randomly maybe Googled some, offshore setup and just randomly opened something. Yeah, which doubly dangerous in the sense that many of the websites that offer, super cheap or super fast, they are often
Yeah.
identity theft or, just
Yeah.
inefficient providers. But yeah, it does happen, and unfortunately, there are, lawyers, even good lawyers, even decent lawyers, they can help you, but they can't really cancel the past,
Yeah.
So what you did is what you did, and sometimes you just bite the risk that you generated. What I can do is I can help you maybe, to hedge it a bit and to, from now on, manage it better.
Yeah.
This is an important point because still today, even if there is more regulation, there is somewhat more certainty, it is still a pioneeristic field, and
Still
it's
a what? What
every
field?
it's a pioneeristic, it's a
Yeah,
pioneer.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a there's never a 100% security in whatever you set up is going to last and is going to protect you from all possible liabilities. It is always a matter of risk management. Okay,
Yes. Yeah,
it,
of
it is
course.
it is not a black and white. I want to open a bakery, I open a bakery. No, it just doesn't really work like that. It's
Yeah.
it's it's a risk management effort that you constantly have to cultivate, right? Some clients, they also choose to cultivate it different ways. So there is a way which is, the structure, there is a way which is the licenses, there is a way, but there is also a way that is personal, no? So migratory phenomenons, a lot of people that move to Singapore, to Hong Kong, to Dubai, to other jurisdictions, yeah. There are many that decide to take, secondary citizenships from, the Antiguan one, but there are many others to, further, hedge all of these risks, right? Because you, in
Sure.
some cases, you don't really know how it's going to come up. I'm sure, for example, that those market makers that got, the indictment, in the early October, they did not think about it. But then again, me as a lawyer and any other lawyer that had any kind of financial, preparation at all, it seems forever that I have been saying that, from my point of view, most of these market makers, so-called market makers, what they do is what in the normal financial world is
Is
wash
illegal.
trading,
Yeah.
which is super illegal. That
Yeah.
is what they do. I mean, they set
Yeah.
up bots. What they do is that they set up bots that do automated trading. Where the bot so themselves is on one side
Sure.
and on the other side, this is illegal in any regulated market, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, as a lawyer, I can also tell you if the market where you operate is not regulated and there are no specific laws that says to you, okay, you can't do
You can't
this
do
in this
that.
market,
Yeah.
then it's fair game. But things get complicated in countries
Yeah.
like in the US where they
Because
can suddenly
yeah,
awake you.
and I think one thing that's important, this is there's so many interesting things to think about here, but one thing that is important to I think point out, right, is that like if Goldman Sachs could do this, they absolutely would, right? Or any, if any trading firm operating on any regulated exchange was allowed to fake volumes by trading against themselves, they
They would.
absolutely would do it, right? They simply
Yeah, well,
it's a fantastic strategy. It's simply that they can't do it because it's illegal in the environments where they trade, right? So if you have an environment where it's not illegal to do this, right? Then I guess the question is it unethical to do it? Is there an argument to say, well, these people should know better? What is what's your thoughts on this?
uh, it- it's it's not it's not that easy, yeah, because in a way, market makers are fundamental to the crypto industry today, because most of the tokens out there, they just don't have the liquidity. Okay, and if they don't have the liquidity on the market, the users, the holders cannot trade them. If they cannot trade them, they will never generate again liquidity. So it's a problem that is self creating, right? So the market makers they do have a fundamental role. A different thing is if you create fake volume to such extent, and after you use that as a marketing ploy to actually say to others, look how
Hmm.
much traded it is, then it's good
Hmm.
for you to invest. That is problematic. Okay.
Yeah.
And, even if not illegal directly in many states currently, it can still be a form of fraud in a way.
Yeah.
But let's say to simply pay a specialized provider to make sure that the two sides, typically are a stable coin and your token, are well balanced. It's critical. I mean, it's critical. I do have to say some of this issue arises from some really questionable centralized exchanges that are out there. So there are a few centralized exchanges, one of which was indicted in March by the US, the Southern District of New York. So
Yeah.
anybody
Okay.
interested
Yeah,
can go to
sure.
Google which one it is.
Yeah.
It's a Chinese
It's
owned,
I
exchange,
I I
very
don't know about
popular.
that. I don't know. We might okay. Which one are
Very,
we
very,
talking about?
it's
We
a
might as well
very,
say
very
it now.
popular.
I
So
don't think it's Chinese owned. I don't think that's
it's
fair to
Chinese
say.
owned, yeah, yeah. It's Chinese. Most of them, they're actually most of the international ones today, they are somewhat Chinese owned. Yeah, whether they are operated from China or not, that's another
Are
discussion.
we
But
are we talking about Binance?
no, no, we're not talking
Who
about
who are you
Binance.
talking about?
No, I will not make the name. I will not do the name, but no, it's not Binance. But it's a bigger one
March.
that
Okay.
It's a
All
big,
right.
it's a bigger one that is very, very, very used. So, for example, them, but others have a policy that forces projects to maintain a certain amount of trading on a daily basis, which is in
Hmm.
general it's extremely high. Why? Because of course they make money, you know, they have a commission on that trading, right? Some of them they even entice projects by saying, we don't even have a listing agreement. You just do a deposit, right? And then you just have to
Mm-hmm.
maintain, for this amount of time, this level of trading. A lot of the founders, a lot of the projects, they do not have any idea that the minimum trading that the exchange requires, it's actually extreme, okay,
Hmm.
for their token. Then they start to pay the market maker. What the market maker can do, basically that is wash trading. There's no way around it. But whether it is originated by a malevolence of the founders, it's almost never like this. Yeah, at least in my opinion. It's mostly originated by greed of certain centralized exchanges and also malpractice of some of the market makers. There is also to say, for example, I worked in the past a lot with a very famous market maker. It's called GSR. Probably you
Yeah, of
you you
course.
heard you heard of them. They are one of the few which I really consider. I have no ongoing work with them right now, so I'm not saying this, out of any return. But they are very reputable and they're very serious. But then again, they operate like a real market maker would operate in a regulated stock market
Hmm.
stock market. So a lot of clients, right? They go now with this expectation of having watch trend after they go to serious people like GSR and they think, oh, but they don't do enough, right? For
Yeah,
example, but it's problematic. So there is a very fine line between using the market maker to generate reasonable liquidity and another thing is do some kind of fraudulent marketing by showing there is a lot of trade
sure.
when actually there
And
isn't.
not disclosing that, you know, that maybe a lot of that trade may be, that one firm on both sides of the trade.
Also, it is a losing game anyway for the project. Yeah. So if the token doesn't actually get traded and the token gets traded, if the project starts to be more successful, eventually, even the worst market they are not magicians. Eventually, the pools, right, they get
Hmm.
lopsided. Typically, we end up at a certain point in which all of the stablecoin is gone, and you remain only with your token, which is now worthless, right?
Yeah,
Right. So you have to be very careful in timing. Projects really need to be very careful in timing when to do the launch, the public launch, when to hire the market maker, and so on. This is not really a
yeah,
legal element, but
yeah.
it's important.
You're a real, I have to say, I've always been impressed by how much you know, not just about the legal side of things, but you really understand crypto as well. I mean, I spoke to a lot of lawyers, in this space, and a lot of them I think understand the law very well, but I think don't understand crypto as well as you do, Jack. Jack,
Yeah,
let's
thank you.
talk a little bit about what are some of the more recent regulatory threats or opportunities? We know we're in a space that's constantly evolving. Where are we at now?
Probably the biggest bomb in terms of regulation in the industry was the MiCA and the MiCA in the European Union. That was a huge issue. Okay. So before that, we had some jurisdictions like Estonia and Lithuania, which were more regulated, but they were still somewhat reasonable. But the new regulations, they are at in some points quite unreasonable. So this is creating now some kind of migratory phenomenon outside, from the European Union outside, in the search of some alternative of being not totally illegal, okay? Because that's that, sometimes when regulation becomes too tight, okay, too strict, in the mind of the regulator, which is typically some, middle-aged plus guy that has no idea of the actual technical elements of what he's regulating on, that's the reality. In Singapore, might not be that way, but most regulators in other countries, they tend to be like this, and even legislators, they tend to be like this in parliament, what do they know? Most of the time, they don't know. So if you become too strict, in the regulator mind, in the legislator mind, oh, it's so strict that now you will finally accept my regulation. No, when it's too strict, most people, especially at the beginning of their, startup and business, they just go illegal. Nobody wants
Mm-hmm.
that. I'm a lawyer. Lawyers, contrary to popular belief, they don't support, illegality or help illegality or lie as a work like, the Hollywood movies make people believe. We actually are lawyers because we do believe in law, we do believe in legality, we do believe in these things, yeah, actually. So it is always about find a balance. If the balance is not there, then you have to find a new balance somewhere else, and this is what is happening. So the biggest bomb was that one, the biggest negative element was that one. The opportunities, there are now a couple more options in terms of junior regulation, which are popping up, more, and with which I'm working as well. Yeah, one is the Republic of Georgia, for example, with which we are working a lot. It's a Eastern European country, physically in Europe, but it's not European Union, and we are working a lot with for a lot of different projects on their licensing, because the licensing is still at this time, I don't know in 6 months or in 1 year, but in this time is still agile, relatively quick to obtain and relatively cheap to obtain vis-a-vis, the other options. There are a few Caribbean ones. There is the Antiguan ones, of course, as well, which is relatively light, although maybe a bit longer to obtain than the Georgian one. The BVI and the Cayman ones, they are not that bad. A lot of clients, a lot of people using Bermuda don't particularly work or like to work with Bermuda for a variety of reasons, but a lot of people doing that as well. So there are some opportunities that are popping up for junior licensing. And again, as we connect into the previous discussion, these can be good platforms for in the future, aim, as the project grows for, bigger and more, in a way, prestigious
Mm-hmm.
licensing. In terms of what the future might hold, provided that I do not have the crystal ball, I think the biggest real innovation, legal, regulatory in the field will be if and when the US, whatever the outcome of the election, they will decide to issue at least some level, at least for certain types of VASPs,
Mm.
federal regulatory, framework. So let's say uh, I have a lot of clients that even want to be totally regulated in the US, and the cases of Binance, Kraken, Coinbase. I mean, there is nobody in the US more regulated than Coinbase. I mean, and they still got sued. And one of the reasons is because every state has different rules. Some no rules at all, some very strict licensing like New York, some, it's unclear, but there is no federal level, single
Mm-hmm.
licensing. This is a bit something that is characteristical of the US. The US is a very united country, but it still retained the idea of being a federation of separate states.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of elements, even in weapon control, or as abortion, or
Sure. Yeah.
other thematics, which are wildly different from state to state. So generally the government of the US is reluctant to issue, comprehensive federal level, frameworks that are encompassing through all of the country. But I mean, in this case, at least at some level, it will be what we really give a push forward to because then there will be a clarity. Okay, it's strict, but it's there. And, once I take it, it covers me for all of the states and the US, overseas territories, and I'm okay. Because otherwise it's very complex. But that is the frontier. And other potential problems, instead, they might come up from existing regulators become stricter or less prone to do business.
Hmm.
So just because we are in Singapore, we cannot omit, speaking a bit about what the Singapore policy appears to be. And there were even ministers and government officials that did mention it. Singapore does not need 200 licensees. We need maybe 20, 30. We need a small number of high quality licensees. And that's what they've
Hmm.
been doing. And in this sense, they've been successful. They are reaching the number, actually, their target number. Most of the ones that did obtain the license, they are quite serious to work with. And you must say you feel confident in dealing with them, because you know that there is the MAS behind. But this juggling, it's very hard to achieve for most countries because rarely a government has such a focus, and clear ideas as the Singapore government has. You might not agree with some of their ideas. For example, you might not agree in just having a smaller number of high quality licensees, but that was their
Yeah,
idea
like
and they implemented it well.
it seems to me that rather than selecting by a certain number of licensees, it should be like anybody who qualifies should be able to get the license, right? It's like it should be either you qualify or you don't, right?
Yeah.
Why are they grading on a curve for licenses?
Well, this is your US roots coming out, right? So the US is a great land of opportunity and
Yeah.
equality, right? So I I understand you. So
Okay.
it should be the market. You are right. In this sense, you are right. So it should be the market that regulates autonomously how many players remain, right? So if you are not a good player, the market plays you out, and then licensing or not, you
Yeah.
will not go on, and the number is self-regulating. But this is not how the Singapore authorities really work. Even in traditional money lending, for example, they decided from the start, or in digital banking, now there are digital bank, they decided from the start, we are going to issue five, or no, 4 or 5 digital
Hmm.
banking license, not one more, not one less. It's just their approach. I do give to them that they, carefully, slowly with their target, but they are meeting their targets while other jurisdictions, for example, Hong Kong, which we thought about a couple of years ago, now everybody is going to get a license in Hong Kong. It apparently it looks like it's not really working as everybody thought it would.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
or even before that, the Republic of Malta, in Europe, we hoped it was the very first one in Europe to have a framework, but at the end of the day, almost nobody, very very few
Hmm.
licenses were given after even 6 7 years. So.
What about
uh,
Dubai?
Dubai, it's a bit of a problematic it's a bit of a problematic jurisdiction, and I have a lot of questions about Dubai. What I can tell you what is my approach to clients with Dubai. I do work with Dubai. I consider it's kind of a split personality case, Dubai, and the UAE in general, in the sense they are great bases for founders. So they are very crypto friendly for crypto funded individuals. Okay. So you are a successful founder, you have a lot of crypto, or you are a trader, you have a lot of crypto. It's a great base for you because a lot of developers accept crypto payments for buying real estates. It is very easy to do exchange of crypto for cash, or to buy cars, or to buy luxury items. So in this sense, for the founders themselves, it's a great outlet. And given that it doesn't have a concept of personal taxation, it also
Mm.
eliminates a lot of the issues related to, realizing those potential gains that you have, amassed in crypto. On the other hand, for businesses, I wouldn't say it's a disaster, but just didn't really work out so far as even the local authorities they thought it would, for a variety
Mm.
of reasons. So I can give you my reasons, yeah, what I perceive subjectively.
Sure, yeah.
One would be, in my opinion, just the company structures, how they are very atypical. They don't really follow the classical Commonwealth scheme of how a company should look, even documentally. They're all based on you have a license in a special zone and the rental of the lease, it's your certificate. It's just already difficult by themselves to understand. Then you
Mm.
have a big problem with banking, in the sense that the local banks, especially for commercial transactions, they are completely averse to crypto in whatever form.
Mm.
Even they do not support really locally licensed, businesses, even major. So there's that, and it's difficult for the government there to fix this because most banks they still are mostly private,
Mm.
private entities, right? So they can decide that crypto is outside of their tolerance. They outside of their tolerance. Then we can argue: is it safer to accept people that arrive with a lot of cash and put the cash? That one they accept. Then one that maybe just exchanged, 5K worth of USD from Binance. So that one would have his account closed, for example. But instead, you maybe you just drop in the bank 100,000 US of cash, which actually can come from any even blatantly illegal activity. That one is fine. So there is a lot of split personality elements in Dubai,
Mm.
right?
Interesting.
So there's that. We consider it, and I advise it to many types of clients as a great base, a great outlet, if you like it, if you like the ambience, if you like the mood there,
Mm-hmm.
I will not really enter into that. So if you like that type, it's a great base for founders at the individual level. At the corporate, at the licensing level, not so much.
Mm.
Even Abu Dhabi, it is somewhat better than Dubai for that because it has a lot of work together with Saudi Arabia. So just disclosure to you, I don't know if you know, but even within the crypto field, I am actually one of the few, very few, even more limited that has a pretty big portfolio of Muslim and Islamic, projects, many of which
Mm.
are Islamic finance, right? Which has its own different rules,
Mm-hmm.
in the Islam world, for example, interest is not really allowed, but you have other forms of money lending, which has to be put into a different way because they have their own rules that follow ethical principles. So I did work a lot with, and I still do work a lot with a lot of Islamic finance. So we have those challenges, but even in that case, we tend not to use Dubai, and then we instead use the KSA, so the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. We
Mm.
use, Abu Dhabi, and we use other jurisdictions which are suitable for Islamic finance projects more. So yeah, Dubai has this element, and it's expensive. So most of the licenses there they are quite expensive. They require heavy local economic substance of local employees,
Mm.
C-level directors, and so on. So I would say that is not really for me. I don't consider it a competitor to the Singapore license or even the Hong Kong one. So
Interesting.
it's
Yeah,
far
because
behind.
there was it seemed like there was a time. Time moves so funny in crypto. It's so hard to even tell. Do I want to say a few years back, last year? But there was a time in recent memory where Dubai became like the big push and everybody was moving to Dubai and
Yeah,
stuff like that. So I guess that hasn't that hasn't worked out that well. Jack, we're coming up on an hour here, so I want to close the conversation. Thank you so much for your time. One thing I want to mention also, we talked a few times about Micah. I've always heard it pronounced Micah. I noticed you were saying Mika.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, I use the Italian pronunciation, yeah, Mikar, Mikar,
okay.
because it's for me it's a Italian, it's a European Union side. But you can say Micah if you want. Just it sounds like a funny
Which
name.
whichever it is, I think I need to probably have a whole another episode just on Micah actually because it's probably so important
Please,
for how
please no.
I'll
No,
I'll
I understand. We can, if you want, discuss that. I have a colleague which works with me and is more active in the European Union, and we can, maybe discuss more about the MiCA or MiCA
Okay. Let's talk about that.
regulation.
Let's talk about this a little bit offline because I think this is something people need to in the space need to understand more. And if you got anything from this conversation, I hope everybody needs to understand that really everybody working in crypto, particularly at the leadership level, whether that be, an executive at a big firm, somebody looking to build and start a new firm, we're all very deeply affected by the regulations in our space, and it's something that it's kind of on each of us to understand and risk minimize to the best of our ability. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's definitely fair to say. And I mean, the very fast and very short version is as well, just don't necessarily take the first provider or the first consultant that comes to you at face value. If it
Hmm.
sounds, too outlandish, too complex in particular, and too expensive, look some more. I would say that for a startup, any provider that goes like over at the top 20, 30K for a whole package of structures and legal assistance, is somehow taking advantage of you if you are a basic startup.
Hmm.
Okay. Licensing, okay, it's another discussion, but basic startups, just don't, and don't assume that necessarily a bigger, huge firm is going to help you better or, in a more efficient way than a smaller boutique one. It's just
Sure.
not really the case. It's not the case in normal fields, and in our field, even less.
Are you taking new clients now?
I am, yes, I am. I'm
How
always
how can
getting
people
new
get in
clients.
touch with you?
They can get in touch with me through my website, for example, marveluxconsulting.com. I don't know if you put, in the intro some details of me. They can
I'll put it in
they can Google
the
my
show
name, and it's
notes.
I am I am
Yeah.
I am there. Yeah,
Yeah, you're
very
easy to
easily
find. Okay.
reachable.
We'll put the website in the show notes.
Okay.
Giacomo, really good to see you, man.
Yes, the same. I hope to see you in person soon again.
Yes, we will. Okay.
Okay.
Take care. Thanks so
Perfect.
much. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.